Hello, my name is Renee L. Rose. I'm the founder of Explore Art Talk. With Explore Art, our featured guests, we have meaningful conversations celebrating artistic and cultural diversity that makes our world extraordinary. So sit back, relax, and check out our content. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi,
Hi, Fiona.
how are you? Nice to
I'm
meet you.
fine. Nice to meet you. How
Good.
you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing all right. It's nice out in Chicago, so I'm happy that the weather is looking up. But yeah, I've been doing fine. I came back from a TAing job recently, so but yeah, doing all right. How are you?
I'm fine. So you're originally from New York.
Yeah, New York, Hudson Valley. Yeah, when I tell people I'm from New York, they usually think I'm from the city, but I'm near Poughkeepsie, so yeah, I flew back like a week ago just to start my job, so I've been here for some time, but yeah.
I have a close girlfriend that lives in Whitehall, New York.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I have some other friends that live in Rochester.
Rochester. Yeah, wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, Rochester's
Yeah.
near where I live, but
Yeah. So I don't always think of New York City. Have a lot of artist friends in different parts of New York.
yeah, yeah.
Because most people think about the city and forget about upstate and real far upstate New York.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely just think about the city, which is, understandable. But yeah, that's cool.
So why don't you start off telling me about your art practice?
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Yeah, so I started young. I think like most artists, around like 10, 11, I really started to take art
Oh,
seriously. Painting, drawing, doing all sorts of stuff, mainly acrylic. And then of course, my sights were already on art school, and so I'm currently attending the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So I'll be having my 4 years here. And yeah, my practice mainly consists of acrylic paintings. I do dabble a little bit in oil painting. I just find acrylic just easier to use, less, toxic, and I've grown up using acrylic, so it's become sort of my staple of medium of choice. But yeah, I do a lot of surrealist type of themes and really inspired, I guess, by past artists in that sort of movement. So yeah, overall just a lot of surrealist elements and acrylic paintings are my main thing.
so what really drew you to surreal artists? And my favorite surreal artist is Salvador Dali. I love
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was. But what drew you into that? What got you fascinated about that?
I took a art class in Poughkeepsie, my senior year during the fall, and I was introduced to an artist named Neo Rausch, who's he doesn't consider himself a surrealist, but a lot of his art kind of aligns with surrealism. And that's kind of where really sort of discovered that sort of movement. And before I was painting, but I was just painting stuff that I felt like wasn't really mine. And just painting, references and photos and stuff of family and stuff like that, which I still do. But I think finding reading that book that my professor gave me by Neo Rausch, or but it had his collections of work and stuff in it. It kind of really opened my eyes to like a different, what art could be. And yeah, Neo Rausch, and then of course it led me to discover other artists like Remedios Vero is another artist that I really enjoy. Her art is really whimsical, and all elements of her pieces really kind of draw me in. And so I'm constantly seeing like new inspiration from the past, and then also, from the from today and the present, and my classmates and people who sort of are in that sort of same space as I am. So yeah, that's kind of just what it is.
So your surrealist paintings that you do,
Mhm.
what are you trying to convey to your audience?
I am trying to mainly convey storytelling. I do include a lot of characters that I sort of just appear in my paintings, and they kind of are a continued theme throughout. my works and sort of building a story, but not really building a story, sort of leaving it open for the people to sort of view and figure out on their own. I feel like it's really important to show, not tell when it comes to art. And so I'm trying to see if I can, of course, fill some more some more characters and some more storytelling, but ultimately stick to wacky sort of unexpected things in my painting, bizarre things I find really interesting.
Give me an example of what you're saying.
Like, for example, in Neo Rausch's work, he focuses mainly on people and in like workplaces and doing, household duties and stuff, but with a twist where it's like it's not at all like that. It's there's a different, different things that show up that are not like a part of our world, and that aspect of surrealism really sort of stuck with me of like trying to explore and put stuff that's like not from this world, but combining it with, areas and nature and stuff that's pretty recognizable. And yeah, just continuing to do that and stuff. And my characters have just sort of popped up out of nowhere, and that was kind of a part of it in a way. When I combine stuff that's normal, like nature, trees, houses, and then combine stuff with like other stuff, like surrealist sort of creatures and stuff, it becomes like it's its own thing. So yeah, that's kind of how it just continues to evolve in a way.
So do you want your audiences to be whimsical or just,
Mm.
be imagine what you're thinking? Like the painting behind you, is that your painting behind you on
That
the
is actually my roommate's painting. She's also
Oh,
she kind of dabbles a little bit in surrealism as well.
oh,
But she goes to the same school as I do, and yeah, our work definitely kind of reflects each other in a way. That's what I love about being in school is seeing everyone's kind of pieces and
yeah.
seeing everyone sort of bounces off one another. But sorry, what was your question again?
Oh, that's okay.
Got
So
lost.
when I look at your paintings, because I was looking at um your Instagram site,
Mhm, mhm.
and when I look at your paintings, um, what exactly do you want the audience to feel when I'm looking at one of your
Mhm.
paintings? What would you want me to feel? Do you want me to go into my own whimsical world or imagine what you're trying to convey to me about a specific subject?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of unsettling pieces. I think most of my paintings are pretty like tame, I guess, but I do want my audience to sort of be sort of mystified by it and at the same time sort of come up with like the backstory of certain pieces. I mean, for example, one of my paintings that I did like last year. It's a huge painting. It's called the Eel Maid's Temple and her brothers and sisters, and that one's pretty direct because it has like three of my main characters that I usually sometimes sneak into my paintings, and it's a pretty straightforward story, straightforward to compare to my other paintings, I would say is straightforward. But I do want the audience to sort of connect the little characters that sort of show up and develop their own sort of their own stories because that's the whole point for me is to even though I have somewhat of a storyline, it's not at all, connected. And so it allows for room for, the audience to sort of make up their own story, use the characters or use
Explore.
the environments that I make on my painting. So yeah.
So when you were younger, when you first started,
Mhm.
were you doing surrealism then, or did you just enjoy the art of painting?
I mainly just did drawing, painting, like flowers, animals. I loved painting and drawing animals. For some reason, they were easier for me to sort of to depict than humans. And then eventually I moved on to people, but I mainly did just yes, my surroundings and what was in front of me. So it was a huge shift just seeing Neil Rausch's work and realizing like you could just paint anything and you can paint environments that don't really exist. And but yeah, it was mainly realism, just realism that I did before I got into high school and then eventually college. But yeah.
So where do you see yourself going with your surrealism paintings? Are you going to stick to this particular topic, or are you going to explore other, you
Mhm.
know, areas?
Yeah, I've recently started kind of branching out away from my characters and just depicting strange things. Like I'm working on a painting right now of like a skirt, but it's like made out of hair, and that's like
Oh,
one of
wow.
my pieces that I'm painting. Which is sort of, Dali, sort of Bosch, sort of like
Yes.
the stuff that I think is depicted. It's not like a common thing to have characters and to carry them out throughout each painting, but that's kind of been a new sort of thing for me as I'm now moving away from characters. I feel like that was more of my most, my pieces in freshman year and then sophomore year. So I do want to continue surrealism, and I will probably continue world building with my characters and making other, little painting situations for them to, be caught in. But I do see myself sort of veering more to just stuff away from characters and almost like traditional surrealism in a way, which is an interesting journey, and I look forward to I'm not preventing myself from stopping and staying contained in what I've already built. But yeah, I would say it's evolving for sure, and I think the next 2 years at undergrad it will continue to do so. So yeah.
So, have you ever developed a series of work with a specific theme, or does each painting have its own character, its own, subject or story?
Yeah, so my senior year of high school, I was involved in like a 4 month long, it was from December to March, I guess. So probably not 4 months, like almost 6 months, where we were making one piece a week and finishing it before the next critique, which was the following week. And the sort of we each had to pick like a theme to do to follow through. And so my theme was making paintings that were reflections of difficult to describe emotions, like sort of brief things that aren't, labeled like anger, sadness, happiness, the sort of in between where we don't really know what it is. It's maybe a mix of things. But that was the sort of the theme for my senior sort of project in a way. And so I made like around 10 pieces where it was just me, like it was a focus was I used myself as a model because that was one of the main requirements too of the program was to use yourself kind of.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was just sort of the main focus, and I used my body as like a reference point. But yeah, that was prior to college, and then prior to me, expanding into different sort of characters and things. So yeah, that was one of the chunk of stuff that I sort of created with a theme and with guidelines and rules, and then sort of devolved into now just each piece is something weird and different. But yeah.
So, have you ever did any exhibitions yet?
I did there was an exhibition that I did senior year of high school. There was an exhibition that I did freshman year of college. And then a few like smaller pop-up things my sophomore year. And then summer I did an exhibition that a friend of mine invited me to do. So smaller things here and there, for sure with local artists, even in New York, with people and communities there. Chicago, I'm definitely trying to branch out and do more here, especially. So that's kind of a goal of mine. A short-term goal is to kind of to continue trying to keep getting my stuff in these galleries in Chicago. But yeah.
So, why did you choose to go to the Art Institute as opposed to going to a art school on the East Coast?
Yeah, it was an interesting decision for me to make because
Hmm.
SAIC seemed like it was such an immensely big from what I came from. Like I came from a small high school, and so
Right.
SAC, all the art schools, the big art schools in the cities and stuff was like it was crazy to me how many people were really interested in art and came together. But it came down to what I wanted to get out of school, and my goal had changed. I originally wanted to go to a college that had a good art program but had other stuff as well. I want to go overseas at one point, and so it came
Mm.
down to SAIC and then Glasgow School of Art in Scotland. And eventually I was like, I feel like it's better for me to be in Chicago. I liked the art scene more in Chicago. There wasn't much of that in Glasgow. And the school was also, Glasgow School is a little old too, and it was kind of like you go in with painting and printmaking as like a, painting and printmaking major, and you stay that way. You can't really go outside of that, and that kind of was like for me art is not like staying within a box or something. So SAC kind of offered just so much in terms of different mediums and what you can experiment with and use, and yeah, I met a lot of great people too. So it's the community as well has been really helpful in the school. But yeah.
So I can ask you then, why didn't you choose someplace in New York to go to school?
That was also a thing. I was looking at Parsons, I was looking at, School of Visual Arts and stuff. I mean, part of me also was like, I want to see what else is outside of New York. Like I want to see everyone's so focused. New York City especially is like a hubbub of like artists, musicians. Of course, obviously it has
Yes.
a long history of being, that sort of center point. But
Yeah.
I've heard of people who wanted to go to, SAC. There were some kids at my school who were interested as well. And once I viewed SAIC, I kind of realized that it offered something that was a little different from like Parsons or from, any
Yes.
other sort of school that I've looked at. And so I was eventually just like, oh, I'll leave home and I'll fly and, we'll see. And so far it's been going good.
That's
But
great.
yeah.
So as a Gen Z artist,
Mhm.
what kind of what do you think is going on with your particular generation that is different in the art world? What do you see?
Hmm. I see a lot of it's interesting because I see similar what I see is similar techniques, similar things. I mean, myself, I reference a lot of surrealism. I see a lot of like a reference nods to like 1970s art and stuff like that. A few of my classmates are sort of dabbling in that sort of thing. It's not so much, I guess, what we do differently because I feel like art is always going to be a cycle of like there's things that we expand on and things that we reuse, but it's been different because of the context of what we live in. There's so much going on that's new, and there's so much that can be expanded upon in life and what's been going on just in general. And I think that's what I see popping up in people's paintings and people's work. And of course, techniques change, and there's always going to be a semblance to another artist of, who did this, and then that artist painted that. There's always a similarity, and I see it in my painting sometimes too, of like who inspires me as an artist. So I see some similarities, but it's definitely just been us dealing with the changing world and what's been, going right, what's been going wrong, and painting and making art about that. And that's been kind of the main sort of difference that I see. But yeah, everyone's very bold. Everyone's very, especially at SAC, everyone's very, not afraid to try stuff. And that's been something that I see a lot of. Like there's a lot, artists have always been kind of that people, those, people who just sort of branch out and try new things and don't care really of like what the public thinks. And I
Yeah.
think I see that continuing, and it's I think more important, now than ever too, of like what's been going on, everywhere, but especially in US. So it's like I see some, some changes and some nods to history and all that. But yeah, it's definitely the context of where we're living in that changes our art, Gen Z in particular.
So what do you think about blending AI with art?
I think it's a really interesting sort of thing to talk about, especially when I know in experience in art school, AI is very much sort of looked down on or is sort of
Mhm.
like pushed to the side as a potential way to use to improve art or to, see inspiration and all that. And it's a complicated thing because there's no way of us really knowing how it's going to affect our art and how it will evolve. We can only just try and use it as something as a tool. I mean, a friend of mine, like she'll do a sketch and stuff, and she'll use AI to see what colors will like look the best. And so there's certain ways to ethically use AI when it comes to art. And if it comes from your mind, and it's like you're using your technology, or you're using it at what's given to you. And so as a tool, AI can be a good thing for artists to use, especially because it's there, it's ready, and it's there to use. So
So as a young person, what do you think about the current gallery system? Do you think that needs to be improved? Do you see people in your generation coming up with other ways of exhibiting the art besides a gallery?
yeah, I feel especially with very large, well-known galleries, especially at the School of the Art Institute. it seems like we have to sort of make our own spaces, which has been, it's an interesting thing to look at too. I mean, I recently went to an apartment, like an apartment gallery that a couple of my
Oh,
classmates had set up and sort of were displaying their art in like their kitchen and then like, in their living room and stuff. And I think those spaces are where I see the best and where I make connections and all that. And I do see a difference in bigger sort of museums and industries where it seems like it's a little harder to get your stuff in there, and where
yeah,
your peers are is where acceptance is going to be the most. And so I do see there's a definitely like a difference in like attitude towards art, and especially with new artists graduating and people, in the school making art. But yeah, there's definitely it seems a little closed off, but I feel like it will continue to change and to open up. I have faith. But
yeah.
yeah.
Have you ever been to Art Basel?
I have not, no.
Do you intend to go?
I might. I mean, I have so much time on my hands. I mean,
Yes. Have
I'll
you been
yeah.
into to any of the big expos before?
I went to in Chicago, there's a huge expo at the
Right.
Navy Pier.
Yeah, I go every year.
Yeah, I've been to that to see sort of what's been pushed and what's been going on. And I see a good amount of good art that I've have now become inspired by, and I see people who are I think are really good. It's always an interesting place to go to see also there because there's so many different pieces of art and so many different sculptures and
Yeah.
forms of things. And but yeah, that expo I've gone to. A while ago I went to like a New York City one in high school that I barely remember. But yeah, I've
Is
been
it
to
the Aubrey show?
that might have been it. I think that
Yes,
might have been it.
I've
I
been
went
to
with my
that.
dad, and it was good to see the space as well and the art that was there. But yeah, a lot of the similarities are just like people who are, there's really in-depth carvings, and then next to it there's, colors on a canvas, and it's very it always kind of blows me away a little bit to see the diversity in the types of stuff that's being made. But yeah, I have fun.
So, where do you see yourself in the next 3 years after you are? Well, a matter of fact, where do you see yourself after you graduate? What exactly are you gearing towards?
I'm looking towards like getting my stuff more into galleries and stuff, operating as an artist. But of course, a recent sort of passion of mine is conservation and conserving paintings, especially, which has been sort of an interesting new thing for me. It's always interesting to see like the stuff online too of like conservation fails and paintings that have been sort of almost ruined by like faulty, people who approach it the wrong way. And I
Hmm.
want to help sort of conserve future paintings and stuff that's, of course, being made as well. And the, people who are just, finishing their paintings and want to conserve it and prevent it from, just being destroyed in the later years or whatever. But that's a new thing I've been doing. But other than that, I mean, yeah, just getting my stuff into, galleries and such. Uh, you know, doing stuff like that, keep experimenting. And yeah, just focusing myself
Do
on
you
the
see
art.
yourself ever working for a museum, doing the conservatory work?
I can see myself, I think, working for a museum with conserving paintings and even it's interesting. I mean, sculptures as well. Like because art is so diverse, there's so many different ways and like chemicals that you have to use in order to restore, to keep from,
Mm.
being sort of aged too much. It's the fact that you can walk into, there's some, paintings that you can barely breathe around because they're so delicate. Like I think overall that whole world is like it's a part of art, it's a part of today, but it's a whole nother ball league in a sense. So yeah, I can see myself working in that sort of area
Yeah,
in a museum.
museums are usually all the ones around the world, especially I love the Art Institute. That's
Hmm.
one of their main things, trying to preserve those
Preserving, yeah.
classic pieces and statues. And it's
Right.
amazing what they do.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. Yeah. You have to
Yeah,
be
it is.
it's crazy. The chemicals that they use and the stuff that they have to. It's like ancient methods, but it's also stuff that's being, discovered as we.
Exactly. For them to be able to show those pieces that were painted, oh God, so many centuries ago, and
Yeah.
disintegrate. and
Hmm.
curate and preserve it and the colors. I just think it's
Right.
so awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting passion of mine. But yeah, that's kind of maybe what I'm working towards, and then my art also.
Well, I really appreciate you letting me interview you.
Of course, thank you so much for interviewing me as well.